Hey guys, this is Alessio Summerfield, the host of Metal Gear Mondays, and you are listening to a backlog episode of Metal Gear Monday. So if you guys hear any mention of Geek Time, the Geek Time network is since defunct, and now Metal Gear Mondays is a part of the original lineup of podcast shows from Forever and Astronaut. If you guys want to take advantage of our Patreon to get really cool exclusive content and speak with other fans, as well as talk directly to the hosts and the guests, you can go to patreon.com/foreveranastronaut. $5 a month on Patreon will get you access to all of our original shows, including Dev Diary Season 1 and future shows. So if you want to support the studio and support content like what you're listening to, please be sure to go to patreon.com/foreveranastronaut or foreveranastronaut.com to check out the rest of our lineup of shows, as well as short films, blog posts, and other goodies. If you want to write into the show, the new write-in information is contact@foreveranastronaut.com, or you can utilize the facebook.com/Metal Gear Mondays. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy the episode. Welcome to a micro episode of Metal Gear Mondays. As always, this is your host, Alessio Summerfield, and today I am joined by Sam Wright.
Hi-yo.
Originally, we were going to have Isaac join us on this. However, due to time constraints, he had to part. So as always, many thanks to Isaac for being a part of the show. We actually just wrapped on our Metal Gear Solid 2 episode. So this is a little bit of a late night recording for Sam and myself. So please bear with us if we get a little punchy and a little delirious. It's pretty late at night.
I also want to throw this out there that this evening I was watching a very important football game, and I may or may not have several shots of Crown Royal on my body right now.
Nice.
Which I hid pretty well during the episode, I want to say.
Sure did.
It's kind of like smacking me in the face right now. So
perfect. Well, sounds good. Sounds good. And on that note, Sam is actually going to be leading the discussion. This episode, we are talking about the Metal Gear Solid digital graphic novels. They were originally released on the PSP, oddly enough, as standalone games, quote unquote games, kind of UMD movies. And these were essentially digital motion graphic versions of Ashley Wood's Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 graphic novel interpretations.
I had to totally tell Alessio was a dude.
I'm sorry, I thought it was a girl. But yeah, so essentially we're going to talk about those. Sam has viewed them via the Legacy Collection, which has them packed in as extras, or you can use the show notes that I have attached and watch entire high-def, beautiful versions of them on YouTube, which I do not know if is appropriately legal or not, but watch them while you can.
This is us washing our hands of any trouble you may get into.
Exactly. So it's not our fault if the video link gets pulled.
That was me washing my hands.
But yeah, definitely. So at this point, we've covered Metal Gear Solid 1 in its entirety, so you should be clear to check that out. Metal Gear Solid 2, however, we are not even a quarter of the way into the game. So if you're following along with us as we play MGS2, definitely wait until you finish to watch the graphic novel version. And due to that, we're not going to talk as much about the MGS2 graphic novel, but we are going to be talking mostly about MGS1's graphic novel.
Yes.
So Sam, take it away.
So, essentially what this is, it's pretty much following the story to a T from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. So if you've never played it and you want to just get a really quick, like, what is this show all about? They take the game and kind of condense it into like an hour and a half worth of like really cool like art style. Which Alessio clued me into the fact that Ashley Wood is the person who did art for Peace Walker.
Yeah, all the cutscenes.
Which I'm actually going to be playing Peace Walker all the way through for the first time as a result of this podcast. So I wasn't really familiar with that, but it's a very beautiful, interesting looking art style. So it keeps you kind of entertained and like interested in what's happening. So yeah. No,
yeah, totally. So I have seen parts of the graphic digital graphic novel. I've not seen the entire thing. But from what I've seen, it seems like they handle sort of the dialogue bubbles and voice acting really, really well. You can tell a lot of time and care went into making this something that's engaging and fun to watch. I will say I'm not too terribly familiar. Sam, how did they handle the gameplay moments between like the story beats? Is that touched on ever in the graphic novel?
Not really. They kind of like skirt between sections. So it's kind of like the reason why it's can be condensed so much is because they don't really focus on the gameplay parts. They kind of do like quick, like Snake is here, and then they do another cut of like Snake here, and then here in like panels, and then they move on to the next story beat, which is kind of interesting. But they kind of take away the gameplay. It's like Snake jumping from story part to story part relatively seamlessly.
Nice. My other question that I had for you is, you and I spoke briefly a little privately a couple weeks back about some weird kind of further deep diving that happens within the graphic novel where they kind of go a little bit more in depth into some of the scenes. Was there anything like radically different or any sort of weird creative direction that the graphic novel took that was maybe a little different than the main game?
The one thing that fucked with me is that, and I'm not sure if I'm remembering this first part incorrectly, but I think like Meryl dies when you're fighting Psycho Mantis, and I'm like, whoa, now that's not okay. And then like they do the fight with Psycho Mantis, and then they move on and they skip over like the cave and the sniper part where Meryl gets shot, and they skip over the blast furnace and all this other stuff, and they take you to the directly to the control room where you do the PAL key. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Are they really skipping over all this really important stuff? And then like out of nowhere fucking Master Miller shows up.
What?
Yeah. And I'm like, what the hell is going on? And they do like a bunch of like weird stuff, and they have a conversation, and they're like traveling, they're like running through this whole section. And then you get to like a certain point, and Liquid and Ocelot show up, I think. And like I said, it's been a little bit since I watched this, so I may be remembering this weird, but somebody shows up, and I think it was Liquid and Ocelot, and they start having this conversation, and Master Miller's like telling Snake to shoot them, and Snake's like, something weird's happening here, and he shoots Miller. And then it turns out that whole thing was just one of Psycho Mantis's like mind tricks.
Oh.
So it takes you back to that fight, and it actually plays out the way it's supposed to, and then the rest of the graphic novel plays out actually how it's supposed to.
That's nice. It's a nice little Easter egg for people watching, and it's also kind of a nice jump into Psycho Mantis's kind of skill set. So that's awesome. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
How do how's the music and everything in the game in the movie? Is it kind of like redone stuff, or is it a lot of throwback tracks?
It sounds pretty throwback to me. I'm not sure if they like redid music from the game and then put it in there, or if they just used the music clips from the game. But it sounded like Metal Gear Solid music.
Nice.
Like it wasn't anything too drastically different.
I know we kind of touched on it in the Metal Gear Solid 1 podcast, but I do remember reading that the voiceover work in Metal Gear Solid 1 was so poorly recorded and captured that they had to re-record all of the voiceover from scratch for Twin Snakes, which means that they had to re-record the entire voiceover cast for the movie as well, I'm assuming, unless they used some stuff from Twin Snakes. As far as the voice acting, how did it work?
I think they honestly just used Twin Snakes clips and put them in there. One of the things I did notice was that the guy who did the voice of Frank Yeager, the ninja in Metal Gear Solid 1, guy named of Greg Eagles, who I'm pretty sure we said that he was voiced by Phil Lamar.
Yeah, is he not?
In the episode. No, he's voiced by Greg Eagles in the first game.
How do you spell
that? So that was one of the Greg, like Eagles, like the bird.
Okay.
Which he did the voice. He's the guy who does the voice of Stillman in Metal Gear Solid 2. which we just talked about. But and he did the DARPA chief in the Twin Snakes as well.
Oh, gotcha. What throws me off as well is that this Greg Eagles guy is actually credited, going back to what we were talking about actors going under different names for Metal Gear Solid 1 because of
George
union.
Bird.
Yeah, he goes by George Bird.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So who the hell did Phil Lamar voice? I know he voiced somebody.
Vamp. He does Vamp in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, so they replaced Greg Eagles in that one with somebody else. I know Rob Paulson did the voice of the ninja in the Twin Snakes, but I can't remember exactly who did the voice of him in the graphic novel. Gotcha. I think it may have been Rob Paulson, but it definitely did not sound like in the first game at all.
Interesting. How did they handle things like any of the codec conversations that were like very pivotal to the story? Do they just have like codec scenes?
No, you never see the codec at all. They just kind of have them over the course of the actual scenes.
Oh, okay.
Which is kind of weird, yeah. Another thing they kind of changed too was that at the end of the game, or at the end of the movie, when you're standing out there with either Otacon or Meryl, you're standing out there with Otacon and Meryl.
Oh, gotcha.
So they kind of like rectify that whole like which one's canon situation by just having them both be there.
Did they do the final phone call twist?
God, I don't remember. I think so, but I don't remember.
Gotcha. Well, would you recommend this? So obviously, listeners of the show should check it out, especially if they're just listening to us talk about these games instead of playing any of them. I would heavily recommend that they watch these just to maybe get some more of the details that we missed, and maybe have like a visual to kind of go along with it. But would you recommend this to like somebody who's new to Metal Gear? Or would you recommend it to any Metal Gear fans? What would you kind of say about it?
I definitely recommend it to Metal Gear fans. It's a really interesting take on kind of the story and how it plays out. And the art style is really just beautiful to look at. As you know from playing Peace Walker. One of the things I will say, like assuming that you are joining us in this podcast without having played Metal Gear Solid 1 or listened to that section, you don't want to go back, you just want to start with 2, definitely check out the first graphic novel, because it's gonna take you like an hour, and you're gonna be able to like get all the important story elements from Metal Gear Solid 1, and then you'll kind of understand a lot of the references we're making throughout us playing 2. Nice. So definitely, if you're somebody who is not playing along with us, but you want to kind of experience and you want to listen, definitely check that out. And then definitely check out the graphic novel for 2 when we're done going over this game, because it'll do the same thing for you that the first one will do for us talking about 1.
Nice. It's interesting to me that they didn't do ones for the subsequent games, like 3 or 4. But
it is a little weird. I don't understand. I don't know why they wouldn't. But
yeah. Well, and likewise too, if you want to support Ashley Wood, I would definitely recommend definitely watch them on YouTube if that's your only way of kind of getting to them, because I know not everybody owns a PS3 or a PSP. However, I will say I would definitely strongly support the artist, because I love his work. I'm actually looking at a copy of Robots vs. Zombies that I have up on my shelf right now. And I would definitely just, you can go out and buy the digital graphic novel as a physical graphic novel at like Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Borders, any of those kind of places. Sweet. Is there anything else that you want to touch on about like the movies whatsoever, Sam?
I really just like how they did it. Like it was just a very smooth, like, thing to watch. I actually kind of want to hear. I know we don't want to spoil major story elements because we're playing through the game now, but I do want to hear like kind of what you think about the second one, because I actually didn't get time to watch the second one. I've only watched the first one.
Gotcha. Yeah, like I said, I've only seen some bits and pieces here and there. I know that the second digital graphic novel is longer than the first one by a fair amount. I think it's pushing.
There's a lot more detail into like.
I think it's pushing closer to like 2 to 3 hours, which is a feat in and of itself to condense that game into a manageable 2 to 3 hours. But I remember from essentially what you've been saying about MGS1, it's pretty much what I remember about the second digital graphic novel, just a lot of the codecs happening in the background during the action, it following kind of the pivotal moments of the story pretty closely and kind of skipping around through the kind of gameplay, just kind of showing us like single frames. And for the most part, it seemed like it was pretty spot on from the bits and pieces that I've seen. But I will say I've not sat down and watched both of them. I feel like a shitty Metal Gear fan because I've watched tons of Metal Gear content. However, I'm no longer in college with a shit ton of time to burn or in high school, so it's hard for me to set aside 2 to 3 hours to watch something that isn't a movie with my wife. So it maybe, I don't know, at some point if I could get her to be interested in checking it out, I think it might be kind of a cool way to introduce her to the series. Though I will say she's not hyper into military stuff, so it might be interesting. But no, I will say as well, if any of you guys out there, listeners, have seen either of these and want to kind of weigh in, tell us what it was like. Let us know if you watch the UMD or if you have the Legacy Collection, or tell us what you think of the art style or anything like that.
Or if you were a filthy thief and watched them on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. Or at least watch them on YouTube and don't torrent them, because that makes you an even filthier thief.
Right.
But
take a shower, you're so filthy.
If you guys have anything to say about them, much like everything else on this show, we would love to read your comments or questions or corrections. And you can direct those to geekti.me/WP/content or contact, excuse me. Or you can go to geek.ti or geekti.me. Geez, it's been a long day. Which is just our website. It's geekti.me, which is just our website. And you can click the contact button up in the top left corner. And definitely come check out the website anyway. If you like this show, we've got other shows. We're trying to work on having a couple more out the door. So cool stuff. We're part of the Geek Time Network. If you're unfamiliar with us, you can hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, and SoundCloud as Geek Time Pod. Or please, we heavily request that you guys rate and review us on iTunes. We like to know that we have listeners, and that whether or not you guys hate us or love what we're doing, we'd love to get some feedback. We will definitely read any feedback that you guys provide to us on the air. So that'll be a fun little way for you to have your voice heard.
Actually, I was looking at our iTunes, and we have a couple more reviews. The first one is from a gentleman by the name, or lady, I don't know, maybe people are naming girls James now. But there's this person named James MT who gave us a 5-star review, says, it's the best Metal Gear podcast out there. If you're a current fan or an old school fan, it's great reliving the game step by step. Plus, the personalities are really fun too. Gotta say, I'm hooked.
Thanks,
which is
James.
Awesome. Thank you very much, James MT. Another one, which is not as glowing, is a 3-star review from Uncle Punk 7268. Gentleman says, or lady, again, I'm sorry for being sexist, whatever. Fuck you. Uncle Punk 7268 says, fantastic podcast for sure. However, the thing that stopped me from giving it more stars is the amount of misinformation about MGS1. The first episode where they cover the section of the game that was in the MGS demo was spot on, but the later episodes have a few areas where the commentary about the game is either sketchy or outright incorrect. The communication tower is the biggest example of this. All in all, still a great podcast though. So Uncle Punk started with the positive, gave us some criticism, ended with a positive. Great way to give criticism, by
Loved
the way.
it. Nice little sandwich.
And thank you for that too, Uncle Punk, because that's obviously something that we know. because you got to think about it, because me and Alessio didn't replay MGS1 when we did that, so we were very sketch on some of the things that happened. And then Cameron and Isaac were both
not taking notes.
They were, one, not taking notes, and two, it was their first time ever playing it. So
Yeah.
they were also not taking in quite as much as like maybe somebody else might. So that's why we tried to do the corrections episode. And, we appreciate criticism like that because it helps us get better. So hopefully, because we're all taking notes, except for Isaac in his head, about Metal Gear Solid 2, and we're trying to chop up the episodes a bit more than we did with MGS1. So instead of trying to force all the information into 3 or 4 episodes, we're trying to space them out a bit more and try and focus on other things more and be better about being consistent with our information. And we are actually, me and Alessio, being the veterans of the series, are actually playing the game again this time. So Uncle Punk, keep listening. We're gonna do right by you this go round.
Totally. No, and we really appreciate it. Definitely, if you guys have any sort of comments like Uncle Punk, feel free to drop them into the iTunes reviews. However, we'd also like to read them on the air and actively kind of correct them between each episode. So if you guys hear anything and you're just upset that we completely missed it, or even you just want to kind of let us know, like, hey, by the way, guys, I think you missed this thing, we would love to read those on the air as we go, and try and keep like a consistent docket of corrections while we're kind of pursuing through the episodes. So definitely let us know. But likewise too, guys, any sort of iTunes reviews or comments are greatly appreciated, regardless of the star count, because it helps us get exposure and helps us kind of figure out what the hell we're doing, because we've been doing
and then
this.
I know that like you can go back and adjust your star rating. So Uncle Punk, if we do right by you and you think we deserve it, you can go back and change that star rating and whatever.
Yeah.
I also know we have somebody gave us 5 stars but did not leave a comment, which is fine. The 5 stars is wonderful and we will always take 5 stars. However, just say some kind words. We'll shout you out. We have no problem doing that. So,
Totally.
Wink or whatever.
Yeah. A little geek time wink.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, thank you guys so much.
That's us self-filleting for a solid 2-3 minutes. So
A Metal Gear Solid 2 or 3 minutes.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Please join us next week. Sam and I are actually going to be talking about Zone of the Enders. Again, this is part of our kind of padded content. This is being recorded a little bit in a batch, since I and Isaac will be out of the country, and please stick around. We'll be back into Metal Gear Solid 2 upon my arrival, and we'll be back to your regularly scheduled programming. But please, if you are big into anything Kojima has his fingers on, or if you like mecha kind of action-y games, or if you're a fan of Zone of the Enders, please check out the episode next week. It will be another micro episode, so it will be nice and digestible and sitting under 30 minutes.
Yes. And please remember, it's just a box.
Just a box.